Welcome, guys. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for always showing up. You know, when we say ukinde chisayo esifubeni sidinga indawo yothetha, you guys are always here. So this is really just a dialogue. This is just a conversation. So we're hoping this will take us, we'll talk probably for like 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we will engage with you guys. Welcome to Jumpstart 1 Live Conversations.
Boop, 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 boop.
No, so you do the boo 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 after Thando takes over.
I was just too in a hurry to go there.
Yeah, I am excited. I'm very excited that this is finally here. I am proud of us. I'm proud of you for showing up. I'm proud of us for showing up. I was thinking today, but if I was doing this solo, I probably would have just stopped. Especially because we have already encountered, you know, a thing. So this is a safe space that we are creating for mental health, to just talk about mental health. And I think we have that in common. I mean, you know, I'm gonna allow you to sort of speak about who you are, and
Sure.
I do want us to position ourselves in the dialogue.
Yeah.
But I think the people that have been following our work outside of this being something that we do in the workplace, but I think we are also personal advocates of mental health. So we try in our personal capacity to show up for people, and I think Mthobisi and I, as friends and siblings now, we are also accountability partners. So we check in on each other. We do also, like Mthobisi will check that I'm showing up for people. And I think those are stories of resilience.
Yeah.
Those are stories of flourishing. And I think it's important to sit like this and to talk about ways in which we navigate the world as it is. Because, you know, the times are quite trying, the times are quite difficult. And we have been speaking mental health before COVID. And if anything, what COVID has done is just exacerbate existing issues. So in like we're already there, the inequalities, we're already there, but because of something as big, as traumatic as COVID and everything that happened because of COVID, then, you know, mental health and any other part of your life, even just your physical well-being, it just deteriorates even further. And so it was important for us to have that conversation. So let me just start by introducing you so that you are officially, you know, you can just chip in. Although so this is Mthobisi Ndaba. He is a very good friend of mine. So whenever I tell people about how we got close, you know, like outside of meeting in the workplace, of meeting at church, I think we really connected through a book.
Okay.
Daring Greatly. Do you remember?
I remember it.
So,
Brene Brown.
Brene
It's
Brown.
one of the most important books I have read.
It is.
In my whole reading career, if I can call it that.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's I recommend it to my students. I recommend it to everyone I know.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a very important book.
It is. It's a very important book. I think I shared that book with you. We were going through stuff. This is 2019. I'm going through like big things. I'm not even in the country, in Goa. And you were one of the people, like I remember you, Tapelo and Nombai, you were one of my, like the people that really held me down during that period. And then we started reading this book. I mean, this is something that I think was quite big. And Brene Brown, in her book, teaches us about this, you know, creating safe spaces, but also being vulnerable. And we were learning together as this group of friends. In my head, it feels like we're working together, but obviously I was working with you and I was working with another friend, you know, I was journeying with different people, but for me, it was like I'm working with my friends through this. We bonded over this book, and I think it strengthened our love for mental health advocacy, and also just realizing, Bana, we do so much, we look so good on paper, and we are, you know, but we go through like seasons that are difficult, you know, that if we, abanye abantu don't get to see that part of us. And for me, I thought if I can be able to see you being vulnerable the way that you are, you know, as friends, I felt empowered, you know, to also be vulnerable. Empowered, I say, to be vulnerable. And so I think if more...
That's actually
right?
very interesting. It's very powerful.
Empowered to be vulnerable. I felt it as I said it.
Yeah.
So we created that space, and then we inspired each other to continue creating these spaces with our other friends, with our families, you know, with our students. Even in the workplace, you know, I mean, Brené Brown really does good work. Now this is becoming a Brené Brown review. she really does, you know, she teaches us how to at the same time. You know, you don't want to go spilling all over. So she gives you like these nice tools that help you, so that you're not just going around breaking down you know. So that safe space then is important, which is what I think we've done here. But this is Mthobisi, is my brother, he's my friend. He so Mthobisi's background is in social work. My background is in psychology, so already you can see the linkages right there. But he has like a very fascinating career track, I think.
So you never told me this, Ngizoyisho phambi
kwabantu, because I mean,
oh wow,
yeah. I think it's fascinating for me. So Mthobisi does that. He's, you know, majors in social work, qualifies as a social worker, and then you went and you did your master's in sociology. This guy, less than 30, is completing, just submitted, corrections are done, waiting for results.
Actually, even the reports have come in.
Like,
they are with the higher degrees committee now. My supervisor told me today.
So
we're getting there.
PhD. This is
in a week or two. You should
come on.
Anyway,
so the next graduation season is City Siangena red gown. So Mthobisi just completed his PhD. We are speaking at Ngolo Hlobo. But social work, sociology, then moves to the School of Education because of also his passion for education, which I witnessed, because obviously I know you as a colleague as well. Mthobisi comes to my classes. Mnanse is in that high school on the other side.
Oh, okay. Really?
I didn't just say that. So he comes by, you know, he teaches my students, he shows up for my students. So he's a colleague, you know, Ngolo Hlobo. So also an education advocate, I would say, based also on your first book. Yeah. But
Incubating Excellence.
Incubating Excellence. Speak to us about who you are, like just briefly. I mean, Siyayazi about all these accolades and, you know.
Okay.
Good.
I think above everything that you have said, I also say this in the book, I am human. And I think that's the part of me I have only been able to reveal in my last book, The Jumpstart Effect. And I think even this conversation will reveal that part of me. And I think by that, I mean, I'm susceptible to all the things that human beings are susceptible to. And I think when people see the things we put out on Facebook, LinkedIn, the traveling that we have done, you know, the books we have published, the awards we have received, it can easily create an image that, you know, everything is going fine, you know. So I'm a young man, I'm a Jesus boy.
Yay! You just said that.
Yeah, I love God, I'm saved.
Come on.
And I think that's also a very important part of me, because all of these things they influence the way I think about things.
Sure.
I'm from the Royal KZN Escort, and we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
And I think all of that, they influence the way I think about things. They influence the way I approach life. Some of the struggles come from those kinds of things as well. Yeah. I'm almost a husband.
Okay. I was gonna say it. I've been practicing to introduce you as someone's husband to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know she's watching.
Hi, Paquetto.
Hi.
Yeah, ladies. I mean, yeah.
Oh wow.
I mean, Gendini plaga, but nonetheless, I am single. But my DMs are closed.
Oh.
Okay, so I do want us to position ourselves in the conversation by saying that this is, I see it as series 2, you know, of a conversation that you have started. So obviously, I am jumping into work that you have been doing.
Yeah.
So Mthobisi had a series. He was running a series last year. Was the series called Mind God, or was that?
It was one of the themes in the series. So we're doing the whole Jumpstart one concept started, and I started wanting to talk about some stuff that were that I had written in the book, and along the way it became bigger than the book, and we started doing a lot of mental health stuff, and one of the themes was Mind God. We also had Uspesi who was speaking about identity. We had different people who were speaking about different aspects of our mental well-being, if you look at it.
Sure. Mthobisi approaches me obviously as someone who is studying and teaching in psychology, also passionate about mental health. And at the time, I mean, no one really wants to talk. Like, we are going through it. So I think personally, I mean, I had struggles. I had lost a parent. I had lost a couple of friends. I had lost a brother. And it was like I was just going through so much. And then this guy comes and is like, come and talk to us about trauma and grief. I'm like, you do not like me. Like, you know? And then again, like, I think you also took me back to that book. And more than you taking me back to Brené Brown, because I mean, Brené Brown, Yesu, first and foremost. I think you also just took me back to myself, like reminded me about why this work is important for me, and you know, things I always say, you know, about each one teach one. Noguti, while I'm going through it, I can give lessons to another person, you know, because I think the kind of pain I was feeling just wanted me to just shut doors and just, you know, get to just be Thandokazi, and you helped me in that. But that was just a one-time conversation that I was doing with you. So from there, we probably were just having lunch when we come up with this concept. And I mean, at the time, I'm consulting this guy for my PhD and how much time I don't have. And he says he's about to submit. And he says, well, on top of you being busy at work, moving houses, in and out of therapy, and all these colorful things I'm doing, how about we extend?
You make me look like a bad person.
You are a good person. You are a good person. Because I mean, for me, like, it's you connecting me back to my purpose, you know? So it's not work that really cripples me. It's work that I'm terrified doing. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm terrified. But I am braving through it, as Brené Brown would say. Wow, this is becoming a Brené Brown review.
Please.
I am braving through it, you know. So you brought me back to that, but we could extend this work. We could do this, and just over like a lunch hour, we're sitting there. We take out our laptops and we conceptualize this series. And like I said, we ads, but we wanted the work to come out in October. It didn't. And I did say, but there were certain things that we were going through, right? We're living through a pandemic. We are husbands and wives and partners and daughters. I'm now speaking about us all in this conversation. We have roles that we're playing in people's lives, but also showing up for ourselves, showing up as abasebenzi, but still like living with a real pandemic where left, right, and center I'm losing people. So why was it important for you to pause?
So this is what happened. Many of you guys would remember I was doing these things every Thursday, 7 p.m., would have these conversations and invite different people. But it got to a time in June where there was the looting that was happening in KZN. And I'm from Escort. That's why I said I wanted to speak about that. And you guys will remember when all this looting thing was happening, Escort was really one of the places where it was highly heated. And my family was kind of affected in a way by those things, because they could not go to town to get groceries. The roads were closed. I could not go home. My brother was at home because schools were closed. So I was alone in my place. And I was panicking because I felt so hopeless and helpless. I couldn't do anything for my family. I couldn't send them food because the roads were closed. That was one thing that was happening at the time. The second thing that was happening was my PhD.
Sure.
I was supposed to finish in February last year. And I have all my degrees
Record time.
Have been record time, and I've been doing very well. Like I've spoken a lot about those things in other times. And for me to get to a point where I could not submit and my scholarship was coming to an end, and it felt like my supervisors are just expecting too much from me.
Yeah.
I would submit stuff like chapters, and they would say, no, you need to like high level analysis, those kinds of comments. And I felt like I was stretched beyond my limits.
Sure.
And I broke down. I remember it was around after 12 midnight, I had a panic attack. Immediately when I realized that, I reached out to people. I took out my phone, sent a message to New Seed, Guti guys, I feel like I'm becoming so overwhelmed, because at the time, the way I was feeling about my PhD, as you guys know, I've always spoken about passion, you know, pushed by passion. But the passion wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
But instead, there was so much resentment
for it,
because it felt like, in my mind, I had planned that by this time I would be done with this thing. I wanted to do certain things. I wanted to continue with the work that I was doing on Facebook because of the feedback that I was getting, that people were being helped by those kinds of things. But I couldn't do that, which is work that I'm like properly passionate about. Yeah. And here is this PhD that is standing on my way. I couldn't get a job that I want because I don't have a PhD. And on top of just the resentment that was there, it really made me question myself, which I think was one of the things that really made me break down.
Sure.
Because to people, I would appear as one of those people who are very confident and assertive and all of that. And I'm all of that. Sure. Don't get me wrong, I'm all of that. But at that point, the PhD made me question myself whether should I have done the PhD. Am I good enough for this PhD? Because I keep on submitting. Yeah, like, is it that important? I have 2 degrees already. Like, why can't I just continue with my life? It really dealt with my confidence in myself. I kept on getting negative feedback. And sometimes with PhDs, supervisors are supervising so many students and they don't have time to be massaging your egos and saying, you did very well here, you could just, tweak it here and there. They just go straight to the things that are not right with what you have submitted. And for me, that's where I was. And I had all these questions about whether I'm good enough. Sure. Is it because, I'm black and from a poor background? Can I really get it? Can I really make it? So all of those things just drained me so much. So at the middle of the night, I had a mental breakdown. I have a panic attack. I reached out to my friends. I reached out to New Seed. Some of the people saw the text, and I remember Utembega called me and she was able to calm me down, that I could even sleep at the time, because I couldn't sleep. I was just breathing heavily and it felt like I'm losing my breath. Sure. I was so afraid that something could happen to me if I sleep. Yeah. So we had a conversation over the phone and she helped calm me down. And what I did at that very moment was to also reach out to ICAS at VITS. And they have that 24-hour service of like online counseling. Sure. And I spoke to someone there, but it felt like I was speaking to like a bot or something. And then, but at the end of the day, I ended up not continuing with that because it didn't really make me feel like I'm talking to someone. At the very same time, I sent an email for CCDU, booked myself for counseling.
So CCDU is it's a psychological service provider, right?
Yes.
For students.
At VEDS.
At VEDS.
Yeah.
So each university, institution of higher education would have its own, should have.
Yeah, so I booked myself at CCDU for counseling. Then I could sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I just realized that actually, this doesn't start now. For about 2 weeks before that, I wasn't sleeping at night because I was stressed out by the PhD. I was stressed out by what was happening. I wasn't cleaning my room. And I started realizing that actually, man, it's so much is going wrong. And that's when it like properly broke down. I started crying.
Can I just say, just to interrupt you a bit. So what's interesting for me is that you have learned about the DSM. So you know about the classification of disorders, of mental disorders. You know about depression. You've spoken about depression. You're quite aware of, know, of it. But as it happens, are we born that this is what is actually happening? But what's also a thing for me, Kukuti, there's a culture that enables that kind of living. So there's a culture in the academy that just enables you not sleeping, you always chasing deadlines, such that now you are having like a panic attack, an anxiety attack, and you can't even tell that I've not been sleeping, I've not been eating, I've been crying, but you're thinking, but maybe it's like you associated with being a PhD student.
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea. That's what happens. You think it's only tonight that I'm working late.
Yeah.
And you realize it's been 2 days, it's been 3 days.
Until it's a week.
Until it's a week and it's been 2 weeks. And I think for me, it's also because for a long time I had conditioned my body that by 12 o'clock I shut down. And if I've been working late, then I would then struggle to sleep because my biological clock is not used to that. So I think that's the challenge. And at the time, I had a stressor, which was my PhD, that was just putting so much weight on me. I felt like all my intellectual juices were poured out. I had nothing left to give. To the extent that I had planned to deregister.
Sure.
I had decided, and I had a full draft. I had decided I'm deregistering this thing because I value my mental health so much. But then, I had friends that kind of talked me through it, that actually, bruh, you are so close. You've come so far to deregister now.
4 years down the line.
4 years down the line, I went to the office, I told Toliga Sibi that, bruh, I'm deregistering this thing. I can't continue like this. And he talked me through, I spoke to Lerato Poshodi, who's now in Switzerland and also just graduated with a PhD last year. He's a close friend of mine. So she also talked me through and helped me through writing the PhD. And I remember also coming to you. And it was just like, how many pages? Maybe 6 pages that was left for me to complete. But I had sat for months not being able to do that because I had so much resentment for this thing that I was so passionate about in the beginning. So it was all of those things. And at that point, I broke down, started crying, which hardly ever happens. I started crying alone in my room and I was like, I'm so afraid of what I might do to myself. Being by myself in this place and nobody knows what is happening to me. I called crying, bruh, come fetch me because I don't know what might happen. And I WhatsApped his wife with, guys, something is happening to me. I can't be by myself. So I think that's what got me out. They came, took me, I stayed with them for a few days. They nursed me. I didn't go to school. I didn't do anything. I would wake up in the morning, get food, just relax and sleep and just get myself calmed down. And I think that really helped me go through it. But what happened to you?
Man, like I'm just so moved by the story, like just listening you retell it. I mean, obviously I was not too far, so I know you've told me this before. But before I speak about me, I remember in one of our, like when we met up, like, so Mthobisi and I would do like work dates. So we would go work together, have a shut up and write session. And I remember I said to you, let's just sit and just write. We had coffee. Well, I had coffee, you had tea. And
I don't do coffee, guys.
And we just sat for 2 hours, put on our headsets. He does not listen to music while working, I think. I put on my headsets, and for 2 hours, I told him, this is what I'm going to do. And I remember in that 2 hours, you accomplished work that you had been putting, on hold for quite a while. And
it's been about 2 months.
Right. And I remember, when you had that breakthrough. And for me, it's, I do want to say, reach out to safe spaces. You know, safe spaces are people. It's not a dialogue on Facebook on J. It's real people that are going to show up and say, I get where you at, you know, and they understand. It doesn't even have to be another PhD student, you know, like you could get Nabanina, like tell them what you need, tell people what you need. I'm going to come back and tell where I was. So outside of everything traumatic that happened in 2020, 2021 for me was, we had gone through 2020 having zonke into ezenzekileyo, we were teaching online. And I remember, guys, so I coordinated an honors program Msebenzini, and I also teach second year, third year as well at the time. I supervise master students, honors students, yonke lando. The show did not stop. I remember how our department was praised for, like, we almost like breezed through a pandemic. Other universities extended their calendar. My university did not. I think we extended by like 2 weeks. We just shut down for like a week or two and we were back. So while everyone is just scared for their lives, we're busy recording slides.
Sure.
Ne? It was just so hectic. And I think 2021, now I've gone through this year that was very difficult, and then my body just starts, you know, I was hospitalized, I was ill, I was just not okay. Beginning of the year, I lost a brother, and then I just remembered, man, last year I wanted to deregister. I can't believe I'm still doing this. I managed to get out of Yonke Londo. How I motivated myself out of it is I applied for money. Oh, wow. Applied for funding to buy me time off work, because for me the biggest thing was that I'm not coping personally. I'm not dealing well, and because personality I'm not as good at letting people know where I'm at. I'm learning. I go to therapy. I have safe spaces. I talk to people. But even kwabo bantu, like I know that it's not so easy to crack, to break those walls. And for me, like, I just retreat. Like, for me, that's my default. So I went and applied for this money. I got the scholarship, guys, like a prestigious scholarship. Like, I still want to work. Like, I remember, like, my dream was New York City, was SSRC headquarters, New York City. I'm out of here. Like, that's going to be the life I'm living. So I get this scholarship. It's going to allow me to get time out. And so I was flourishing. So I want to bring that conversation in. Sure. So I feel like I was supposed to be living my best life. I had other issues, like with my house. I needed to, I had issues with my tenant. So I made this decision that I am going to move out from where I was and move back into the place I bought.
Which is where we are right now. Right.
That my therapist had been telling me. So I remember I bought this apartment 2 years ago. And my therapist said, and I bought this apartment and then my father got ill. My father never got to come here, and I think I held some resentment. I didn't want to move in, and she was helping me see that. And at the time, I'm like, let's talk about grief. Let's talk about trauma. When you go to therapy as a psychologist, you're like, this is where you're supposed to be going. Izangapa, don't go there, because she's like, let's talk about how you just made a big purchase and you're refusing to move into that house. Why? And I'm like, I don't want to do that work. Ne? So obviously, like, as with anything that you're going to avoid is opindibuye. So this happens for me last year when we were planning to be having this conversation. So I decide I'm going to move. Also now I'm pushed to move because I'm having issues with tenants, and it just makes financial sense to come back and dizohlala up. But I give myself 3 months because I got the scholarship, right? The scholarship allows me to travel for some time. So I make this plan to travel, to be in different cities and work on my PhD. I do that. It is stressful. So while I do it because I love order. If I'm going to Cape Town, I need to know a month earlier. And a week before I travel, I already know what I'm going to be doing. So I don't like surprises. Like, I love controlling stuff, which is not a good trait. So I want to have a control over my itinerary. So I just decide, you know what? You are now 30. You need to do this. You need to just leave. And live a Putinia. Like, I was literally like, I had clothes a Putinia. I was like, I'm just going to drive to a place in Gazi. And that's what I did. So I was somewhere in Pretoria for a while, and then my sister asked me to come through because I think my sister also could see, but there's a bit of dysfunction. So my sister calls me, I go to her, and thank God I did. So I am attending this workshop. This is now September, a month before we release the work. I'm attending a workshop, and I have to submit a piece of work. I submit the work, and we go to the workshop for a week. The last night I've received feedback from a person who's from outside of South Africa, who does not know me, who seemed like she didn't like me. Like only, like I was like, oh, she hates me. It felt, because she kept saying, how are you working full-time and doing a PhD? She kept just coming back to that. Yeah. And in that space, I really felt like an imposter. I felt like I don't belong here. Like the people that I hear, the kind of work that they are doing, like even the Delela, my research about, who cares about lived experiences of Black women in academia? There's like other brilliant things that people are doing. But I had a panic attack. Ndigwi hotel.
Sure.
So this is not the first time this happens to me. So, and because I'm up here kakhulu, so I feel it. It's about to happen. It's about to happen. I am about to feel like I'm dying. I'm not dying. So I'm doing the whole, I'm talking myself through it. I did all the things that I tell people to do. I lie down on the floor. I need to feel the temperature of the room. I need to interrupt myself. Even if it's just getting into the shower and just or two man's, just to get out of it, because it's these heart palpitations that feel like I cannot breathe, and then I just told my sister, and she was not too far, thank goodness, and she came through. Bandenzela an office kwabo, I can't ever forget what they did for me, Nomi and Wag. Because I was booked, because I wanted to book myself into Airbnb because I love you, but all those very toxic.
Which also, it's something very problematic. A lot of people suffer because of those very attitudes.
Right.
Which,
I'm connected.
I don't want to be a burden.
Yeah. And I've been living my life on my own. I didn't order. I didn't plan.
I can deal with my things.
I can deal with my things. Exactly. And I'm not gonna break down. And you've got bigger things,
You've got kids, you've got this. You start thinking for them.
And I'm like, my sister is gonna get tired of me. And that's not because I just started saying those things. This is how I feel. I feel that if I do stay with you guys, this is what's going to happen. My sister's husband, this guy goes and gets me a workspace. They give me a separate room. I have my own workspace. These people are not there during the day. I am, they just gave me that. I have Wi-Fi, I have food. I come out of the room when I want. I'm not judged. I'm prayed for, and they just took care of me. That's what I needed. And I guess the similarity in our stories is that human connections matter.
Exactly. It's a whole point.
Human connections matter.
It's a whole point. And for me, I feel like the one key thing that I'm taking away from both our experiences is that immediately when we realized that something was wrong, we didn't sit and say, no, it's gonna be fine.
Right.
I'm gonna deal with it. I'm gonna work with it. I'll be fine. We immediately reached out.
Yeah.
Because that's what we should be doing.
Sure.
And I think the other important thing is that we had already created those safe spaces that we can reach out to those people and they will not judge us. You say you can come out of the room whenever you like and you will not be judged, which is also very much important.
It's important.
And that's what we mean by creating safe spaces. That people understand that this person is going through stuff, is experiencing a mental health situation, and they are not thinking straight. Because at that point, when those things are happening, you're not in your right mind, and you need people who will be able to understand that actually we need to understand this person is not his normal self.
To bring you back to yourself.
Exactly.
Because I think what happens while you are sort of braving through this panic attack, because for me I don't think it's like an attack as in like the event. It continues, like you will continue to wake up and feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And for me, like there's certain things that I've learned about for me to have a good day, I have to write down what I'm going to be doing, to plan. If I don't do the praying first and the reading of the word, then like I need to get my life in order. So also what I did then, which I feel like now we've started speaking about coping skills, right? Because we just had a whole conversation about flourishing and resilience, which we will be exploring in all the other dialogues we'll be having. So then I deactivated all my social media platforms. So I am a fan of social media, but I'm also very aware of what social media does. So I police myself kakhulu ngendlela endiposta ngayo. So I'm always just conscious about, uposta oko. These are the kind of, even more than uposta, really, let me scratch that. For me, it's like sometimes you can just scroll through your phone when you're supposed to be working. Like for me, those things, they hint about, sissy, you're spending too much time here, and yet you've said that in this period, in this season of your life, you're prioritizing A, B, C, and D. If phone was not part of it. So I have to like take myself outside. Some people don't need that. So I sometimes need to detox. And I remember it was mental health awareness, and I felt so bad because I wanted, especially like I wanted to show up for people. I wanted to write. I wanted to check up on people. And I couldn't do that. And I had to I think I wrote it on Instagram, but this is what has been happening. And I've just decided to take a pause. And I remember you did something
I did the same
very
on my page.
similar, you know, which is not easy, to admit that to yourself.
It's very hard because if you've been the one talking about how we should take care of our mental health, and I think it also brings us to something very much important, that knowledge is not a vaccine.
Right.
It does not mean we are immune, but it also means that when things happen that would put us in those mental health difficulties, we know what to do.
Sure.
I think that's also very much important. That speaks to the whole idea of resilience or resilience. It doesn't mean that you won't fall down, but you'll be able to bounce back because you have this information that I understand that this is this kind of a situation, this is this kind of a problem, and I just need to reach out.
Right.
Even though it's not an easy thing at that point, but I think it's very much important. And just that vulnerability to go out to social media, to a page that has about 3,000 people and say, guys, I'm the guy who's been talking about mental health and saying, let's take care of ourselves. I'm struggling, so I'm going to pause. I would not respond to people's messages that were talking to me about their own situations because I needed to put my mask first before I can put somebody else's mask.
Right.
So I think that's also something that's very much important.
Yeah.
In creating these safe spaces, we must also make sure that we are safe.
Yeah.
And we have that safe space before we can be a safe space for others. And I think that's something very important.
It's very important. And we put ourselves on the line for other people, and we call that love. And I think that's the worst thing you could ever do to a person that you love, because imagine putting your life on the line for a child. This is such a bad analogy, and saying you are doing that because you love them. I think your child, more than seeing you die, they want you alive, So I think even the people in our lives, they would rather have us alive. So, and people will surprise you if you go to them and say, I'm struggling. This is what I need, or I have not even figured out what I need, just reaching out to those people. I want to go back to the conversation here, resilience, right? Because we are alluding to it. I mean, we're not defining the concept because it really, I guess, would be this bouncing back. But when I think about resilience and, thinking about myself, ndichinga that I lost a parent at age 13, and I'm thinking about this now because the conversation I'm having next week is with someone who saw me trying to deal with the loss of my mother, but only dealing with it probably. I mean, my mother dies at 13, so I mean, 5 years later. So 5 years later, I met Unosi, and I was reflecting on how she played a big role in that part, in me, like just even realizing, I don't got this, I'm not I'm a psychology major. I've got all these distinctions, but I'm not well. I need to go to therapy. I need to treat people better. I need to talk about feelings. I need to, so then I had to do really difficult work, this Maseti. One, because when my mother passed, I was too young. I didn't have the tools, I think. And I think Ekaya, what was prioritized was prayer. And it was not necessarily done in a good way, my father, what he knew as a pastor, was to give me counsel. And the kind of counsel I got was from him as a pastor more than as a father. Later, I would tell him that this is how I want you to show up. And then he did.
Sure.
So in varsity now, I'm exposed.
Sorry, can I just hold you there?
Sure.
I think this is something also very important about creating a safe space. Creating a safe space also means you should be honest enough to people about how you want them to show up for you. Because if you do not communicate those expectations to them, that this situation and this is the kind of help I need, you are setting them up for failure.
Absolutely.
And then you will start saying, but people are not there for me. But you have not said anything to anyone. Nobody knows what you are struggling with. Nobody knows how you want them to show up for you. Maybe people are just calling you, but you don't need them to call you.
Right.
You need them to do something else. You need them to pray for you. You need them to talk to you. I think that's also something very, very important. That you be honest and courageous enough to say, I don't want you to show up for me in this way, but I would appreciate it if you show up this way. And that is what a safe space is.
Absolutely. I would later learn in therapy as well that I'm not as good at telling people where I'm at. So, like sometimes you have that conversation with a person, but 5 years ago, I needed a call. I needed you to come over and cook for me. 10 years later, it's a different need. I need you to read a paper. I need you to remind me to wake up at 3 and continue with that reading. I need you to keep me accountable. So I think also with safe spaces, you also just need to keep, if you need to update, the system, you do that. You just go and say, now this is what I need now. So, and all that vulnerability, all that going back and forth and talking to people, is important. So back to resilience. So then I think I did a lot of work then in varsity through safe spaces, which, at the time I didn't even know were safe spaces. Like I remember Thandokazi, my other friend, so we were like one of those people in varsity who would know Bengai, like a lot of people who would help me see myself, put that mirror, but then later I started like doing more intentional work and even going to therapy and choosing a kind of therapy that works for me. And the skills then that I learned there, I was aware that, to get out of that, anxiety attack, this is what I did. So when my father passed, I remember I knew when he was ill that he might not live a year. So I immediately went to therapy, and it was difficult. I think going to therapy before my father passed was more difficult than going to therapy after he had passed, because then I'm sitting there, I'm like, I am a Jesus girl. I love the Lord. I have faith. How could I be speaking like this? It felt like, what if this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy, And thankfully, my therapist, who's also, has roots in Christianity, could understand, because I could get there and say, but I believe God, I believe that God can do it. But also I know that I need to come and prepare myself, I need to sort of come and just only for imfazwe, sort of like so that I don't fall into a depression, because I knew this one would kill me. And it almost did. And then, so for me, the issue of resilience then is not just bouncing back, but remembering the skills that I'd used in another season. What did I do then? What did I not do right? What can I take from there? How can I strengthen, my tent so that I'm firmly secured, Because I would later realize that therapy is important for me. I need to go to therapy, but prayer is important for me. Like order is important for me. I need lists. I need to do lists. I need every genie to be reminded. I even had lists and reminders on my wall. On my mirror. Sometimes of like just reminding myself to breathe. But I need a minute to breathe. I need a minute to like just,
It's interesting, Thando, because as we kind of wrapping up from this, we have spoken about resilience, we've spoken about flourishing in the beginning, and I want us to get to the part where we speak about hope. But what I'm also getting is the fact that dealing is work.
Yeah.
Like, dealing with stuff is work.
You need to be intentional.
So you really have to be intentional. And some of the things might make you feel like, I'm crazy to be doing this. I have to write a list for everything.
Right.
I have to ask people to wake me up when I can just set an alarm for myself. You know, which is something that I sometimes do as well. But it shows that dealing with stuff is work.
You need to commit.
You cannot conquer an enemy you would not confront. That means dealing with stuff means you have to face it. You have to face the fact that you are feeling this way about your father's illness. But as a Christian, that's
Right.
how can I be feeling this way? But this is the reality I'm in right now. So that kind of hard work, and in the Jumpstart effect, I have this analogy of a wound. That when you are dealing with stuff, it's like you are cleaning a wound. And if you have ever been injured and you had to disinfect a wound, you would understand how painful it is. Because you are putting stuff in it that will make it so painful. But that's a different kind of pain.
Sure.
It's the pain that leads to healing.
Yeah.
And I think that's also very much important when we think about dealing with like these emotional things and mental health issues, because it's not easy, it's difficult, and it's painful, but it's a different kind of pain.
Yeah.
The kind of pain that would lead to your healing.
It's necessary. I have a friend who would remember this. I think of days where I would wake up, you know, and I'm like, yo, it's Therapy Tuesday, hashtag Therapy Tuesdays. And, you know, just feeling so pumped and, you know, I'm going to get coffee, I'm going to go to the gym, get coffee, then go to therapy. And it's, you know, and then I get there and it's theater, you know, it is theater. I come out of there feeling worse. And
unfortunately, there are no anesthetics for
for
emotional things.
as coop man lo mama ben komba like not today. Like today, let's talk about the fact that I just, you know, conquered A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's really, really hard. For some people, it's not therapy. For some people, it's letting your partner know that this is what is happening. It's looking like you're falling apart to your children, because sometimes it's that, ne? You are a mother. You are, you know, you are this strong person to your children, at least, and teaching them about umama utata sometimes cries, and that is okay. And I don't think that's easy work, but again, what you're saying, necessary, very important.
I would like us to talk about some of the alternatives, because we've spoken about therapy, which to some degree in South Africa is a luxury.
It's not
we have
accessible.
access to those things because of where we are,
Privilege.
which, you know, other people do not have.
Sure.
So one of the things that we had spoken about is how we would like to think about alternatives.
Sure.
Alternative mental health care that people can talk to, can and use instead of therapy that they might not have access to. And if you guys at home can think of anything that has helped you deal with your mental health difficulties, please do share it on the comments, because somebody might actually benefit from that.
Yeah.
So your thoughts, Thando?
So easy for me, because I mean, this is work I'm doing.
Okay.
So mindfulness would also encompass taking care of my physical health, drinking enough water, sleeping, meditating, praying, breathing, you know, so that community and connection. So community for me has been church, has been being part of a group of praying women, being part of a group of young girls that sort of look up to me, but I'm learning from them. So I have all these different groups where I am the youngest in the group, and then I'm in another group where I am sort of part of, like, the only one in my 30s. And I think both are so important. So that's community, that's connection. And going back, I've had to also just go back and heal my child, Thandokazi, that's young. So I'm learning how to swim, right? And for me, like, this is like a big deal, hey? It's winter, it's cold in Joburg, but I wake up every Thursday, I'm learning how to swim. I've always loved swimming, but I remember going swimming with my cousins and learning for the first time that I don't know how to swim. So because I love water, I'm not scared of water, I thought I could swim. And I thought swimming was la plastic, sifaka yoka ShopRite, and running elwandle, running like when the waves come and then you run away. And then I remember going like to a big swimming pool and watching people swim and realizing that I didn't go to a school where you are taught how to swim. And I think that's always been something that bugs me. So I spoke to my cousin Unangams, and she started teaching me how to swim. And then later I just took myself to like an adult swimming school, and it is doing wonders up here.
And it's amazing how these little things that sometimes we take for granted are actually playing a big role in terms of our mental wellness. And I always like to say this: you must get into those kinds of spaces before you need to deal with things, because when you are still fine, you don't think that you need to be doing all of these things, whereas when you start doing those things at the time when nothing is wrong, nothing is making you break down, nothing is making you go back to your traumatic childhood and all of those kinds of things, then you'll be able to bounce back. Because when you're doing these things, it's building your muscles that are enabling you, your emotional muscles that are enabling you to bounce back. So I think that's very much important. And just to add a few to those things, I had also written some of these things I thought about. So the part of community is important, but there are people who would find themselves in a difficult situation at a time where they do not yet have that community. So there's a lot of support groups that people can join, even online. There's quite a lot of them for different things. People dealing with anxiety, people dealing with depression, people dealing with post-traumatic stress, and all of these different things. The nice thing about those things is that they are free. You just need your data and you'll be at your own home. And the other important thing about that is that it's different from going to therapy, because a therapist might have not had the same experience as you. But when you are in a support group, you are with people who can perfectly empathize with you because they've been in the same kind of situation.
They know,
and in most cases, you find that the groups are facilitated by survivors. There are groups for people who are rape survivors and all of those kinds of things. People who have been able to overcome the same thing that you are going through. The other thing you were talking about, reminding yourself to breathe, which is something very, very important.
If you can afford a watch that reminds you to breathe.
That's what I was about to say now, that we have our cell phones, we have, most of us, you are probably watching us on a smartphone. So you can download apps that will just make your phone vibrate and remind you that take deep breaths. And you'll be surprised what a difference that makes, because it really calms you down, especially if you are somebody who struggles with anxiety. And all of those kinds of things. You start overthinking things. Just getting those 5 minutes of just taking deep breaths.
Again, centering yourself, bringing yourself back to yourself.
So that's very important. And the other thing that we wanted to do is to bring someone who would speak about yoga. Yes. But we're still trying to get that happening. But it's also something very much important. One of the things that they did at work during COVID, when they saw a lot of people were struggling at the office, and we had online sessions, I think about 5-7 sessions of yoga taught by like a professional yoga teacher that I wanted to bring into this conversation. That's Human Connections, by the way. And I could see the difference that it made in terms of my sleeping patterns, in terms of my rest. Yoga. It helps. It makes a huge difference. Even in terms of your back, because we sit a lot in front of screens and all of those kinds of things. And the nice thing about this thing, you could find a lot of this information on YouTube. You could watch a YouTube video teaching you different yoga poses that releases tensions in different places. So that's the ability, that's the advantage we have with technology. Last one is journaling.
Yes, I had that down.
Journaling, it's also very, very important. I'm not very good at it, But it's one of the things that has taken me through some of the deepest and the darkest places. And it's like it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with yourself. It enables you to externalize your thoughts because you see them differently when you externalize them. So I think that's also something very important. And at the same time, it's a form of expressing your emotions.
Yes.
I once spoke about bottling things up
Yeah,
and what
what
happens
it
when you're
does.
bottling things
Yeah.
up. So I think journaling is also something very, very important. And if you can build that habit before you get into a time where you are struggling, then it would really take you through.
You know, something else that is also part of mindfulness, as defined by positive psychologists, I might add, because I'm a student of psychology, is gratitude journals and gratitude jars. And I always take these things because I am quite serious about my faith, ne? And I have been learning about how God has always been responding to issues of mental health, but we've not been reading as written, I guess. And I mean, we are going to explore that in this series. So the thing about like just writing answered prayers, or I'm grateful for this, like having a jar where you just write, I'm grateful for A, B, C, and D. And during a time where you are having quite a difficult period, you go back to that. It just like journaling, it also just reminds about wauke walapha. So the nice thing about it is that because you are going through a hard time and you go back and you read all these little notes, like you remember being alive is a thing to be grateful for. You know, I'm grateful for this relationship, for that. It just also just raises hope, you know, because I think the issue of hope is you having something to live for, you building a meaningful life that is worth being alive for, being healthy enough to see through. So that has also been helped. But for me, mina andienzi like in the way that it's supposed to be done. Sometimes it's while journaling, I would
You can customize these things for yourself.
for sure.
Depends on what works for you.
For sure. I have a friend, Thandokazi. So Thandokazi is big on yoga, big on mindfulness. You're that girl. But she taught me in the I even have like a gratitude jar somewhere that I'm not using as I should. But she taught me that. But write it down, put it there, and then on that day, take it out. You know. So yeah, customize. Was this useful? I hope this was useful. If it was, well, I hope it was useful. I'm not going to say if it was not useful. So, I mean, I'm still going to be here. So Mthobisi is going to be behind the scenes now. Thank you so much. I know just how it's not easy to have this conversation. And it always feels silly when you know, because you're like, I can't believe I spent 2 weeks just being anxious over talking about feelings and telling people to but I'm so grateful for what you do, for who you are, just in my life as a friend, as a brother, but also to the community, to other young people that look up to you. Most of them, like a lot of my friends know you, a lot of I'm always talking about you, and just the spaces that you obaguzo. Like, I'm just grateful for the kind of person that you are, and you are doing a lot of work that is valuable to boys who we often neglect. And I know that you don't often speak about, I don't think you see yourself as a mentor to young boys. I mean, I've even tried to get you to start something, and you're like,
boys.
like, nah, I can't do this. But I think there's a lot that you are doing without formalizing, but sometimes just braving through your own life, sitting here as a hardcore Zulu man, and just being vulnerable the way that you are. So I'm really grateful for that.